Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership's Heart podcast. And today I am super excited to have on Lee Itzhaki. Somebody reached out to me a while back, just recognizing and realizing that we kind of really similarly aligned with the things that we care about and what we stand for. And so we got to talking and I just loved everything about him. And so that is why, Lee, you are on my show. Welcome.
Thank you, Heather. Glad to be here.
So, for those who are listening right now who might be like, who is this guy exactly? Where are you on your leadership journey right now?
Well, I'm building a tool to help other leaders to build better relationships with their employees. So I've spent over 2 decades in tech, both in management and as an individual contributor, and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And we can talk later about this tool and how and why I built it. But that's where I'm at.
And that's keeping you busy at this point.
I'm pretty busy. I think you can see the circles around my eyes.
You're like, I
A
never
lot of
sleep.
hours.
Yep. I
It's
think that's great. It's exciting.
yeah, it's hard to start something from 0 to 1. It's a lot easier to go from 1 to 2, but 0 to 1 is pretty tough.
Yeah, that's true. I remember, so gosh, many years ago, most people don't know about this, know this about me. You might because you've read books, but that I used to work with Mary Kay Cosmetics. And what I loved about that, it was a multi-level marketing company. And but what I loved about it is they already had this process in place, kind of like a franchise. And you could just jump right into it. And they had all of these tools to help you run your way, and you didn't feel like you were starting from the beginning. And then I was in a similar situation some years later. My husband had a mortgage company and he really wanted me to come in and kind of grow and run the loan officer, so the sales team. And so it was already in play again. And I jumped in. Now I had to create a lot of new processes, but again, the company already had an established kind of roots. And
Right.
so each time I'm like, so this is the first time I had to start something from scratch with employee fanatics. And it is a different beast for sure.
Same thing with writing first book. I'm sure that was challenging, and now you're on your fourth and soon to be fifth. And
Yep. It
yeah,
is crazy. Yeah, you and I were just talking offline, so it's just funny for those who just behind the scenes. Uh, Writing books is literally like giving birth, and not from the physical pain perspective, but there are a lot of things like as you have children. I have 4 children now. I have, it's the fourth book coming out. Each time you forget about some of the pain, or you forget that you didn't get enough sleep, or you just forget all about things until you're actually in. You're like, oh, is that what this was like? And so that's kind of stuff I'm going through now. A little bit of growing pains and just with this next book coming out. So anyway, fun times for sure.
yeah, it's exciting nonetheless. It's hard, but it's exciting.
So as you think about, when I talk about leadership a lot, it's not just about necessarily leading other people. It's also about leading ourselves. So self-leadership is a huge component of caring leadership. And so what do you think, what's your best or biggest practice that you do that you think helps you lead yourself better?
So I'm a workaholic. I know that about myself. I'm not necessarily trying to change that. It's just is who I am. But before I start working, I kind of pause. And that pause, depending on the day, could be for a minute, it could be for half an hour. Just kind of reflect what I want to do, slow things down. I make coffee for my wife. I get breakfast ready for the girls because I wake up early again. I'm a workaholic, type A. So literally before I log in and check email or check Slack and start working, I just kind of pause and, just reflect on the day and kind of enjoy life for the first 15, 30 minutes of the day, as opposed to what I used to do was immediately get on email. That was,
Mm.
within 30 seconds of waking up, I was already on email. But I think this pause has really helped set the tone for the day, and I can really attack it.
I love that. That power of the pause works in so many areas, doesn't it? It works on stage. It works when we're with our kids. It works when we're with our spouse. Like before we even respond to someone, how do we pause? And in this case, I love it because I have that bad habit too of just immediately going in and responding to things I need to before I even hop out of bed. And it's just not a great habit. So thank you for that because
Right.
it's a reminder that that's just an amazing practice of self-leadership for sure.
Yeah. Get the phone away from the bedroom.
Yeah, that's probably not a
You
bad.
know,
The only reason I have mine
what
nearby, the main reason why I have it is actually because I have 2 college kids and they're not at home. So I want to make sure I can respond. But funny enough, I have earplugs in, so I'm not sure I'd hear them anyway. So maybe I'll do what you
right.
say and just call it a day and just it is what it is.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So now, I'm curious to know when you think about people who worked with you in the past, whether they were on a team that you manage or just you as a colleague around you, how would they really describe your style, like your personal way of showing up, your personal way of leading you and just leading people around you?
I think it depends on if you're talking about when I was younger, maybe in my 20s or early 30s, and I was far more aggressive and more, hey, you should do this, do it this way, and do it by this date. Let's go. Well, almost like a classic manager from many decades ago. And then I've over the years obviously softened my stance as I learned that that doesn't work. It works in the short term, great. I mean, the short term, yes, you can get people to do stuff and go the extra mile. Long term, it's terrible, right? It's bad for everybody. So I've kind of softened it a little bit more and more leaning towards a servant leadership kind of model where, okay, let me help you. What can I do for you? And the big one recently over the last 5 or 6 years, let me get to know you and understand you beyond the projects you're working on, right? So
Mhm.
what makes Heather tick? What are your favorite foods? What music do you like to listen to? What are your kids' names, your husband's name, etc.?
So I want to transition into this a cool, I think, tool for the workplace that really can help a lot with culture that you're developing now. But before that, I want to get a little bit into why is, caring leadership, leadership with heart, having strong corporate cultures, treating employees with respect. Why is it important to you? Kind of where did that whole drive to do that come from?
Yeah, a couple places. One is from my own experience. Like I said, it did really work the way I was doing it before. It didn't work well. Only in the short term did it work. The other ones I started reading more research and learning more and learning from other leaders and thought about my own journey of who do I go the extra mile for and why? Why I like working with this person, whether they're my manager or just another person I'm working with. And it really boiled down to their relationship. They're just likable. They took an interest in me beyond that I'm an employee, right? So, and then if I can get on my soapbox here, for the employee, for the person that works at the company, it's a very emotional relationship with the company, especially in the US, where we work and what we do is such a huge part of our identity. It's if you meet somebody new, it's either the first or second question. What do you do for work? Right? We hardly take any vacations. We spend the majority of our waking hours at work, thinking about work, doing work, or preparing for work. For the company, it's a transaction. I pay you, Heather, X amount of dollars for your marketing services or customer support or whatever you do. So I think companies and leaders need to realize, hey, this is a big emotional relationship with employees. Treat it that way. Be careful, guard it, nourish it. It's not just a transaction to the employee. It's a part of them. It's a big part of it. So that's kind of part of my journey, realizing that, and then when I interact with employees or other people I'm working with, have that back in my head, like, hey, this is important to them. This is a part of them. Treat them like a human, which I know sounds ridiculously obvious, but we don't. A lot of companies and leaders tend to just treat it as like, hey, Heather, you're employee 4562, you do XYZ, and we pay you. What else do you want? Right? We give you benefits. You work remotely. What's the problem? Why aren't you excited and engaged and working hard?
So tell us a little bit more about the tool that you are working on that will really kind of help to change the shape of workplaces as it relates to relationships at work.
Yeah. So what I did a few years back is to better understand people, to better get to know them. I was putting their information in Google Docs because I can't remember everything. So favorite foods, colors, allergies, their grandmother had hip surgery, pet names, kids' names, whatever. And that worked for a little while, but it couldn't scale. There was too much information. I couldn't, it wasn't categorized. I couldn't ask it questions. I would always have to search. So I went on Google, of course, and looked for something that could help me. It didn't exist. I asked friends of mine at large companies if they had something. They did what I did, or they used post-it notes, or they used their memory or Microsoft OneNote. And these tools don't work. They don't really work. They don't go deep enough. They're you can't they don't have the features of what I needed. So we built Loops. It's currently in beta, but it works now. You go to heyloops.com and sign up for a free account. But what it does is it lets people put in information about people they work with, whether it's employees, colleagues, customers, suppliers, categorizes that information, and then you can ask of it. So if I met Heather a couple years ago and she told me she likes chocolate, I know you like chocolate, and I forgot what does she like, I could just ask it, hey, what does Heather like? Or what would be a good gift for Heather? Or what's Heather's husband's name? Or how many kids does Heather have? What's the name of Heather's last book? As long as the information is in there, I'll get the answer. And it also helps us be more proactive in that if it was your birthday today, say, hey, it's Heather's 40th birthday and she likes chocolate, maybe you should send her a gift certificate to C's candies or what have you. And in the future, we're going to be integrating with people's calendars. So we'll say, look, you have a meeting with Heather in 2 hours. Here are things you can talk about based on that information. So now I can really use what I know about people to show that I care. Because if I can't remember your husband's name, even though you've told me 5 times, or I can't remember that you have 4 kids, to you as an employee, you're like, I guess Lee doesn't really care about me because I've told him 7 times that I like chocolate and he keeps buying me candy. So that's essentially at a very basic level we're doing, and we're using AI to help us get more and more advanced.
I love it so much. And by the way, chocolate anytime. And anybody who tells me I'm some many years younger than I actually am, I already love you. So we'll keep talking. We'll keep talking. So the tool. So now right now you're in beta, and it's just, right now it's just web based, right? You don't have the app. That's what you're wanting to try to do is get to the point where you have an app. Because for me, that's when it's going to change everything for me. I'm
Yep.
going to be 100% honest. We talked about this, right? That this is going to be an important evolution for me. I know I'm not a millennial or all the other generations that are younger than that, but I am a person who lives off my cell phone. I do like 90% of everything I do is on that phone. And so I'm
Yeah.
excited for this because when this tool hits that, I am all over it like white on rice. I can't even tell you because I love the fact that because right now, what I do, and I'm sure other people do this, is I put stuff on my calendar. Not there in people's names, just like it's a birthday, it's an anniversary, it's don't forget this, don't forget. But I mean, like, I can't just inundate putting down like this person likes chocolate, this person likes hockey, whatever the heck it is, right? And so I love the fact that you can do it. I love also the fact that you can just be like, because this is totally me, like, okay, what's blah, 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 blah. Right. And
Right.
the other thing that'd be so cool when you start, because I know this is all going to happen when you have the integrations and you're like, okay, oh yeah, so it's blah, 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 it's their favorite chocolate. Okay, do me a favor, go to blanky blank site and like order some chocolate and send it to Lee or whatever, and I just think that is crazy. It's like you'll have your own personal like concierge service just by getting it into, and I think that this can get there at some point. And so it's because where you're starting right now, I think it's brilliant when we think about how to make employees feel important at work, it doesn't cost a lot of money to get there. It has so much more to do with what Lee's talking about, which are the details of their lives. And while people will leave for a significant amount of pay increase, they mostly won't leave for a little bit more or even moderately enough if they feel like the place they're currently at understands, pays attention to the details, makes them feel important and valued, respected and heard. These are basic truths. And so I love the fact that the
Yep.
tool that you're in that beta stage for is a way to proceduralize the thing that produces the positive emotions on the front end. I always say that, well, yes, employee experience, positive culture, just people stay. It's because of the emotions. It's because of the way we make them feel. And
Yeah.
it is because of the way we make them feel. But I do believe deep down in my soul from my customer experience days that customers and employees will stay. They will stay longer when you do something in the background that produces the emotions, but it may be some kind of system that produces the emotion. It might be some kind of process you put in place that produces the emotion, and the emotion's happening all the time. Somebody asked me the other day, I'm not going to say who, but somebody asked me the other day, they were asking me for feedback and they wanted me to tell them, have you seen a change in me? Have you seen a difference in me? And I'm like, huh, well, maybe this generally. And the person was looking for very specific feedback. And I'm like, I'm going to be honest. This is something I know to be true, that most people remember recognition, being seen, if it's happened in the last week. Other than that, our memories are very short. But in this case, if we're doing it pretty consistently because we have reasons to, because we put it in the system, there's some process to recognizing or just pointing out little details, that person now feels like, gosh, how in the heck does the SVP of our company have time to even remember that my grandmother was going into a surgery? Those
Right.
kinds of things. That's what I think is pretty impactful.
Yeah. And to your previous point, we are working on creating an app. So this will be an app. But right now, you can still use your phone and go to the website and then use the microphone on your phone to, hey, Heather Younger, her husband's name is John Smith or whatever,
Yep.
and hit it. But you're right. If you have a place, you have systems in place to make people feel human, they will stay. And the opposite is also true. If you treat people like a number, regardless of if you have a ping pong table in the office, you give 5 weeks of vacation, you have great health care, they are going to leave. right? If they don't have good relationships with employees and their manager, they're more likely to leave. They're not going to give it their all. Doesn't matter what you pay them unless it's an obscene amount. It doesn't matter the benefits. So yeah, you're right. It costs far less to treat people well than to treat them poorly and have them leave.
It's crazy how intuitive this sounds and how people say they know it. But how many times you go to Glassdoor or you see like reviews about organizational leaders who just aren't getting this right? I mean, I know it might sound basic. It may not be rocket science, but are you doing the things consistently? So when I wrote that book, The Art of Caring Leadership, and I put the 9 behaviors to it, and since then have continued to drill down on each of those behaviors in different books, it is because I'm like, listen, people, get it through your skulls that like you just have to do the things, and you have to do the things very consistently. It's not like you can just, today I'm going to be this good guy or good guy, whatever, and then tomorrow I'm gonna be a jerk, or tomorrow I'm gonna be a good guy, and then tomorrow I'm gonna do absolutely nothing. Like,
And and none of those 9 behaviors cost anything monetarily.
mm-mm.
They're all free. They
Yeah,
cost a little bit of time and effort. You have to be intentional, right?
yes,
That you're going to create these relationships and you have to put in the effort, but they don't cost anything, which is why it's really confounding that companies aren't doing this more, right? Because right now, and we talked a little bit about this offline, is the top for a company, and I'm talking big companies, the Apples, Walmarts, you know, Googles of the world, Amazon, their top priority realistically is the shareholder, if we're being honest. And then it's customers and then it's employees.
yep,
And I think that should be absolutely flipped. Take care of the employees, who will then take care of the customer. And you'll long term, you'll be fine. Profits will be fine. Your shareholders will be happy. So really focus on the employees and focus on the employee relationships. Treat them right, and everything else will be fine. I think that goes to your point of, hey, leaders, you just have to do these 9 things. Well, the company is set up in a way to where that's the last priority. So I think it's got to be kind of a start at the top, the organizational level, to convince. And I think the work you're doing and the research you're doing is great to convince the big companies, the people at the top, hey, you need to think about this a little bit differently. You already might be a little off, right?
mm, mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah,
big effort.
yeah, I do. I think, and the good thing though is that there's so many people, you, I, and a whole plethora of others who are trying to do our part in the world to make the change in whatever way we can, whatever's like suits us best, whatever's our natural giftedness. And I know that those that are listening, those that definitely listen consistently, are interested in finding more ways and thinking about the ways that they can improve. And I have to say, I know I tweet a lot, I talk a lot, like you hear me talking a lot, talking head on this need to be making sure people feel seen and heard and valued. And I do think that besides us leading us better, so like us doing more to fill our own needs as leaders, I think the most important thing we can do is to make sure people are seen, heard, and valued. And when we do that, it's hard to do because we have to take all the outside world out. We have to peel away all the distractions and give people our undivided attention, which is, I can tell you, I know it's hard. I talk about this all the time. I train, and I'm still have so much hard time with this. I have 4 kids. I have all these things, and it's just a very tough thing. But here's the one thing I ground myself in. It is that person who's in front of me right now could be on the verge of making some really bad mistakes as it relates to their life. They could be in a real hard place emotionally, mentally, physically, any of those things. And me taking that time to be present with them, to really, really, really see them in the moment and be okay with discomfort in the conversation or whatever it's happened, the energy that's happening, is the biggest gift I can give to them. It might actually save their life. And I don't think people see listening and real presence in that way. And so that's why I just really set out to just continue to go, I'm going to keep harping on it. I don't care if you think I'm just like, I'm just a parrot saying it. I'm okay
Yeah.
with it because it's just a reminder of how much being present with people, what it gives to others.
That's an interesting point because most of us as leaders, we don't think about how this affects the employee outside of work. We're just talking about projects and, not that we have to be people's therapists, of course, but we have to, get them right because you're right. There may be something going on outside of work that it might tip them over and lead to some really bad consequences. So that's actually a really good point that we need to think the whole person, not just, okay, for the 8 hours that Heather's working at ABC Corp, I'm going to be nice. We got to be cognizant of everything happening in Heather's world and help her out.
Yeah. And to your point on like not being a therapist, like if you all think I'm telling you to be a therapist, That is totally the wrong direction. I do think that when we see people and who they really are in the moment, and we give them that time, attention, and we open ourselves up to what they need from us, more often than not, they know they're not going to be a therapist. So, but what they do need is our presence, and they do need us to care. So when we show that we're present and that we have like this level of empathy for their situation, and then maybe we refer them to their ERP program, or maybe we refer them to, some person that we've spoken to before that was really good with us, something like that. We express that compassionate action in the moment. That's what they're looking for. We don't have to be the therapist. We just need to know, like, how do we get them resources? How do we care enough? And they know we care enough. They feel we care enough to put them to the next thing. That doesn't just leave them hanging. Most of us go up to a certain point and then it's just like this drop off. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying there's a consistency. So let's say I talk to somebody and I say, oh, come over here to this program that you have in the organization that helps, like the employee assistance program that helps them with maybe finding a therapist. Okay, so then they go. You don't know if they go. You get them there. You think they may have had an appointment, and let's just say a month or two go by, and you say, how did it go? How did that go? Did you ever follow through on that EAP? If not, like, how's that going? There's nothing wrong with doing that. Now, HR might be like, oh my gosh, stay way away from that. Okay, I'm just stopping that right now. Like, if you don't, when you're in Heather zone, you're not going to be talking about that's not a safe place to be, because it's not about safety. It's about compassion. So it's about relatability. It's about being there for your fellow human. So I think in that moment, just know, like, it's all right. It's gonna be uncomfortable. It's okay. You may be thinking you're overstepping, but you referred them there. Don't just drop it off, because maybe they need one more nudge, just one more nudge, and then they go and they see you care.
Yeah, and think about how companies lay employees off right now. That process, it's horrible, and because
Yeah.
they're so risk averse, right? The manager says, "Okay, surprise, HR's on this call with us. It was nice working with you. Bye. Talk to HR now." And like, so we're terminating you today, Heather. You get 2 weeks. And there's no it's very legal, like clean and sterile. So yeah, and that's just one aspect. I mean, we could spend
Yep.
a whole podcast talking about the
Oh
various
yeah.
pieces of, but that one's a big one of like, think about how you're making that person feel. You're treating them like, they gave years potentially of their life, and it's just a very cold 20-minute discussion with HR. Your manager is not even allowed to speak with you. Yeah. And then another one you talk about listening and being open is, even if you don't know that Heather's having an issue or your employees having issues, using you as an example, but I've been in tech for decades now, and I know a lot of times we'll sit in a meeting with, let's say, the vice president, and say, okay, I need ideas on how to do X. Anybody ideas? And we'll all give ideas. None of the ideas will ever be used. So, and this happens enough times, we're like, I'm just going to stop giving ideas. Why are you even asking me? This is just an exercise, and you think you're being nice and asking for ideas, but if you don't really want our ideas, you don't care, you already have the solution in your head. Don't even, don't ask, don't bother asking. And I think these very simple things, like just listen to your employees. And especially the frontline employees, they see and hear things that you don't as an exec.
Mm-hmm.
You really should take these ideas into consideration, whether it be a new process, a new service, a new pricing, a new strategy, whatever it may be. And I've seen that happen a lot, especially in tech, where I spent most of my career, where we're asked for our ideas. And 95% of the time, that's it. That's as far as it goes. Or we're asked to even do a bunch of work and research, and we go, okay, Mikey, here you go. And they go, okay, thanks. And
It goes into the abyss.
you can tell whether it's good or not. You can tell there's no consideration. At least consider it.
Yeah.
And then I think the person will feel, like you said, valued. They'll feel heard. Whether you implement the idea or not isn't the point. Is, did you actually listen to my idea? Did you consider it? Did you think about it? If you did, great. I'm good. If you don't like it, that's fine.
I totally agree. So now we're at the point of the podcast where I want you to be sharing with those listeners maybe a time when you didn't show up the way that you advocate now. Maybe there was a time when you didn't show up as a leader with heart, or that you didn't show up as a caring leader. Like, do you have a specific instance that you can think of that you can share? And then what did you do to kind of come out of it? Was there some trigger that kind of knocked you out of your way of being? I'm curious.
I mean, I can think of a couple examples. The one that now we look back on it as kind of funny, but I did this massive project years ago, and I had a bunch of people help me with this project. And we publicly thanked everybody that helped. in front of hundreds of people. Got on stage, gave him a bonus, round of applause. I mean, in front of hundreds of people. And the last person we thanked later told me, "Hey, today was the worst day of my life because of you, because of me." And I was like, "Man, you were just on stage in front of all the executives. You just got a $5,000 bonus. Help me explain, what did I do wrong? I don't understand." He's introverted and he's from a culture where they don't, public recognition is not valued. It's actually bad. And I completely didn't take that into consideration. I kept thinking like, what is wrong with you? And I kept saying that to him, like, what is wrong with you? And I was actually getting upset. Like, I went out of my way to get you this bonus. I went out of my way to make sure you were recognized publicly in front of 100 people, which to me, is what I would have wanted, because I was just assuming, well, if I want it, all of the employees want it. And then it took a while, but then he explained to me, hey, in our culture, we don't do public record. It's a team thing. I don't like being in front of people. That's why I'm a QA engineer. I like to be by myself. I just like to work by myself. I have anxiety. This caused me, and he went through all this pain, and it was like, oh, wow. I caught, inadvertently, of course, but I caused so much pain and anguish for him because I just thought, well, because I like it, anybody would like it. And I had to get out of that space. But that kind of knocked me a little, like, okay, I now have to take people I recognize differently. There's different cultures, and which is obvious, right? But in the moment was not obvious to me. So I learned that one the hard way.
Wow. And it's a very good lesson. It's a very good lesson. I can think of this, how this plays out in so many ways at work, in so many ways at home, where the saying of, like, it's such a cliche saying these days, but it really is true, where it's like meeting people where they are.
Right.
Something that changed for me during the pandemic was my view of empathy and compassion. I used to always talk about empathy, but I was really talking about compassion. But I always use the word empathy, not understanding that empathy is sensing like the needs of another person, and compassion is taking action on behalf of another person. But I was always talking about empathy from the compassionate side. So I was thinking it was about taking action for somebody. And I got to the point where I'm like, actually, I think compassion is more important. I think like that, taking the action. So as we learn, like, through these things, we have sometimes they're like smacks in the face that we
Yeah.
go, oh gosh, or punches in the gut. Wait a second, I thought I was doing well here. I thought I was doing something good here. And I realized there's something else going on here, maybe something higher. Maybe there's more work to be done, you know?
Yeah, and anything at the company level, like we just discussed, is a lot of, when I talk to execs, they say, "Lee, I don't understand why our employee engagement scores are going down. We've given everybody huge bonuses. We've given them flexibility in where they work. We've done this. We gave everybody new MacBooks. We gave stipends. We have these happy hours that we pay for." And they're like, "But why is engagement going down? I gave everything the employees have asked for." Yeah, but those are all kind of short-term, like, dopamine hits. After a while, the ping pong table isn't as much fun. The raid, you kind of get used to it. But if you treat them great, which is free, that long term, right, should
Mhm.
improve your employee engagement. Like, treat them like a human. As you say, let them be seen, valued. There's no substitute for a VP remembering my daughter's name that I told him 2 years ago.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I mean, that, a raise going to give me that same feeling. It's like, wow, Heather remembered my daughter's name. That's so cool. Or Heather remembered I like the Lakers, or, whatever. That's amazing.
Which is what I love about Hey Loops. That immediately the concept stuck with me, because I thought it is the little things. It is absolutely the little things that make all the difference. I try my hardest to go out of the way to do this, even just with what I have on my plate with the kiddos, and trying to do it with other people that are outside of the family, sending notes or sending little cards that have a picture of us on it, or just different little things that are like, they just always, I'm thinking of you. Like, hey, I haven't forgotten you're in pain, kind of that thing. I think a lot of us don't know how to handle it. We either don't want to deal with someone else's pain. Pain doesn't have to be physical, remember. You get the same response. The same response happens whether it's physical, emotional. It's all the same kind of things that are happening with us neurologically. And so when we know someone's there, we may give them that kind of empathy in the moment. We may even do something compassionate for them once. But by the way, like, that thing that's there is there for a while. And so why not make it a habit? It doesn't have to be every day, but it's like, okay, oops, it's been a few weeks since I've reached out to that person, and it be, workplace or whatever. So these are just the little things. These are the ways that we show that we care. It's consistent efforts, consistent thing. That's my dog over there in the background for those who are hearing it. There's just no way around that, and I'm not going to try to edit it out. This is Heather zone here with the dog in the background. We don't have kids here anymore because now they're all back to school, but
That's right. School started. Yeah.
oh gosh. Okay, so now we're at the point you get to ask me any question. What question do you have for me? Now you kind of turn into the podcast host, and I can answer it any way that I need to.
Yeah. So you did ask me same question. I'll turn it back to you. So what are kind of some moments where you got, slapped in the face or you learned like, oh, wait, I need to change my tactics here because what I was doing isn't getting me the results that I wanted, and what systems and processes do you have in place to ensure that you continue on the right path?
It's interesting because when I think about my leadership, I was never going about managing, like being a manager. I was never going about managing people or leading people for a result. That just came to me just now, Lee. I don't think I ever was trying to get what I mean by that. It wasn't a result of, is outside of the relationship. So like when I was managing people and when I was leading people, it was always about like, how do I lead this person with dignity? How do I not screw this thing up? But it wasn't about like, how do I not screw this thing up so they go do my project? How do I not be a jerk so they go do my thing? It was never about that. I never had that. It just came to me as like, huh, no wonder there could be people totally not relating to me because they need to get things done. And so do I. And so did I, by the way. I needed to accomplish goals and tasks. But the end goal for me was always, how do I keep this relationship intact? So I remember one, like the most recent, probably about 8, 9 years ago, I was working in an organization and I had a habit of, I'd come back from a meeting with a group of other leaders who I always felt like they don't get it. They just didn't have the same view. They did want to, their focus was more on the end game. And I was more on like the relationship was the end game. And so I'd come back really frustrated and my team members would see my body language. I wasn't very good at hiding it. And I remember I came into my office, she was my team lead, and she'd come in and say, "You're okay?" And what I should have done is been like, give me a little time, give me a little time to process, and then, I'll come back out and, then we can talk. But I would kind of like let it out. And that was the worst thing I could do, obviously, because I would not only, it would make her be doubtful of the team and what was happening, what we could accomplish. But then she'd be like wondering, well, if she can't, who I see as my leader, a strong leader, if she can't deal with this, I know I can. And so it was a bad time and it would be my habit that would be consistent through my leadership. But this particular time, I think I just saw it in a much bigger way. So I went back later, apologized to her and even the team that's just saw how I kind of came into the office and just said, you know what, if I can't share something with you that uplifts you or that inspires you, I'm not going to be sharing that. So if you see me come in, I'm not saying I'll never come in, but I won't be coming in and I won't be letting you know what happened. I'm going to give myself time. So just give me time over here in my office. Let me process the thing because there's always going to be a better, like a silver lining in it. And it's not that I'm not going to be truthful with you. I just want to make sure that whatever I do, I don't make you feel less confident in you or in me or in the organization and or your abilities. And I think by doing what I was doing that and I apologize. So that's what happened. So that's a struggle for me. That's just going to be a struggle. I am what you see and you get what you get when you come to Heather. And so, but to a certain extent as a leader, you have to say, I get that authenticity is all great, but you have to be selectively vulnerable. You have to be selectively authentic to a certain extent so that you're not hurting or damaging another person as a result. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So for those right now who are kind of like, this is kind of, hey, loops is interesting. I kind of like some of these concepts. What might be, not everybody's going to go out and start their own product line, but what might be some ways they can either engage obviously with Hey Loop. So give us a little bit more on that. And at the same time, maybe even just like a word of inspiration for leaders who really do seek to lead with more heart. They wouldn't even be listening right now if they didn't.
Yeah. So for Hey Loops, if you go to Hey Loops, that's plural.com, click on sign up. You can sign up for free. You don't even need a credit card. Do it with a couple clicks with your Google or LinkedIn credentials and go ahead and get started and add people you work with and some information about them. I think what we talked about is make people or try to have people feel heard and valued, but you have to do it within it, right? There is some work there. I have to want to be a good listener. I have to want to engage with people I work with. I have to want to get to know them beyond whatever projects we're working on. And once you do that, which again, it doesn't cost anything, I think immediately see benefit, right? Short and long-term benefit if you do that. And I think as a leader, you'll feel better as well because You'll understand the people you're with a little better, and hopefully it's mutual, so they'll understand you a little better. So in theory, collaboration should be easier. You'll feel better about going to work. So it also helps the leaders as well, and just the employees. But I think there's intent, put a little bit of work in it, just like a marriage. It doesn't, you don't just say I do and everything's great. You got to put your work in, right? It's a relationship, and it's what we talked about earlier on in the podcast. Is for the employee, it's an emotional relationship. So you got to be cognizant of that. It's part of their identity. It's a big, big deal for them. What they do for a living, how they do it, who they work with. It's a big deal. So be caring, have caring leadership, right? Leading with heart, like you say.
Mm. I'm so glad that you joined me on here, Lee. And I don't normally highlight things like products and services, but for me, I felt like I almost was compelled to. I couldn't not, because somebody's out in the world trying to change workplaces and employee experiences the way you are and from the heart. I just wanted to bring you on and make sure that anybody who was listening could at least hear this and kind of play around here. And just together, we can all kind of do our part to change just one person's experience with their workplace. So I appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Heather. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.